All right, hi everyone. Coach Al here. I'm sure I'm going to have some technical difficulties with this, but I'll do the best I can, and you've got to start somewhere, right? So, been doing a call to action for a while about using AI tools and how it can make life a bit easier for a lot of us. And there's a lot of information if you go on all your socials and all of that. It's all about you've got to use AI. You're behind. Everyone's losing their jobs. So I've been building some stuff in the background, but I wanted to give you some reality about how long it takes to learn and what's involved. And then it does get easier, of course. Um, before I dive in, I want to be upfront about how long it's actually taking me to learn all of this. It's probably taking me 18 months. So we all knew starting with ChatGPT, um, that was what we all first heard about, and then all the other ones started to come out. So like many people, I was using ChatGPT as a Google, keeping transcripts and learning a bit about it. What really interests me was when my partner started to introduce me to Diary of a CEO and Cody Sanchez and people like that that were getting these AI and automation and software leaders on to explain what it all meant. So one of the ones that got me really interested was a when they started to talk about vibe coding. So they brought on the founder of Replit, and Replit is basically an AI automation app that builds applications that replicate something that you might already use or something you want to connect to. And what it does is it uses a lot of these different AI code scripts. So if you've got an inquiry-based thing, it'll use ChatGPT. If you've got a coding type thing, it might use Claude. If you've got an image generation, then it might use Google App Scripts or Gemini, which is good at creating images. That just gives you an overview. So I started looking into Replit, and it was because I wanted to solve a problem. I was looking at how long it took for me to get things done, how much I was paying for software and things like that, um, and whether I needed to take some ownership and learn. And because I've got a technical background, I thought that I would be able to learn it fairly quickly and be able to own my own software and make changes. But basically, I wanted to understand what was coming um, and what it worked like underneath rather than just having to buy all these platforms that everybody's got and just blindly trusting it. So that's the background. Um, so I'm not here to tell you that it's easy. I'm not here to give you some quick shortcut. I just want to help give people an understanding of what's involved. So the first thing I wanted to do was I was using an enrollment platform. It worked quite well. I liked 70% of what it did. It was good for enrolling students for term enrollments. It was good for sending invoices. It was good for um, marking attendance via an app. But what I was finding was that if I wanted all of my coaches to have access to the app to mark attendance, that was an additional monthly cost. It wasn't high, but over time that began to add up. So um, then if I wanted text message functionality, it would charge at the old rates of text messaging, which I was quite confused by. Um, and so that would add up over time. And then if I wanted email function, so all these things that would bolt on, like many of them, the cost started to add up. So I wondered whether I could build my own. So it started as an idea of an enrollment app. And then I thought, well, what if I had my own website? So I started to discover what Replit could actually do. So why I needed the change is I wanted some more control, and I wanted to minimize my costs because I run a pretty lean operation, um, and I wanted to be able to make changes myself and test them myself. So that was the reason. So originally, I got excited by what Replit could do, and I made the enrollment app turned into a website, and then I thought I could have video analysis. So I got excited and kind of over-engineered it. So then what I needed to learn is that you get a monthly allocation. So you'll hear tokens and credits and things like that. And we kind of think, oh, if I want Pro, it costs 30 US a month. And what you don't understand at the time is you have a certain amount of tokens or credits that get used per instruction or task. So if you ask an AI-based agent or task builder to do something, it will go by what it knows and it will just try and create it. And if it runs into obstacles, it will look for ways around it. And they're getting better, but basically that takes time, and time means it uses up your tokens and credits. So the biggest learning thing is learning how to plan ahead better and having like a development environment, and being able to test things without them going live. Being disciplined about when you work on it and being clear with what do you want it to do, and testing each function and make sure that it does what you want before you add something else. So I then had to scale it back and say, well, what are the primary functions that I need it to do? What's the day-to-day stuff that I need it to do? So I started with that. Got the website building. It became much easier for clients and parents to find information. I was able to add multiple web pages, so I could have an enrollment guide. I could have a frequently asked questions. I could have a link just to a form to fill in, and then I could just send that link. So it started to become a lot more user friendly. So what I'm hoping is that I can provide solutions that work for you, that make your job easier so that you can do your day-to-day working with your clients or getting new sales or projects, because your systems are working, that you're capturing leads and things like that. So you'll see on my screen, we'll go to the next page. So basically, I've used AI to improve coach communications and building systems that could scale to help people if need be. All right. So the initial website cost me $5,000 and took a few weeks to build. The developer was fantastic. He had a background in fitness and business himself. Added email so that I could have the how to adapt email. But my concern was if I needed to make changes, I would have to go back to the developer all the time. And so some of those things were at a low cost point, and other things would have been, if I had to do a full rebuild, I saw it as an expensive exercise. So I was locked into, say, WordPress or what that particular developer used. If I wanted to add a blog page, I'd have to ask to have that added. So they're all time lags, and so you got to try them out. So I wanted some greater control over my own systems, and hopefully make it cost effective and time effective as well. So yeah, so between the enrollment platform and my website, I didn't feel like I had a lot of customization options available. There was limited integrations, so I felt I was using too many systems, and I was 100% dependent on the vendor for any changes or updates. So whether that was a software platform that I was using and I had to wait for them to roll out an update like we do with iOS and things like that, or liaising with a vendor and say, oh, can we have this function? Can we have that function? And then there was limited features in that system. So I felt it was a bit clunky. So I wanted to take what I liked about those systems and see if I could make them a bit better. So this is just a basic cost spread. So this is just just to give an idea, it took a couple of years. It cost quite a bit of money. Over time, you're paying monthly fees. So it does absolutely add up. And these are things that if you sit down and drill down, you go, actually, I spent this money here, but what were the ongoing monthly costs? Especially if you're trying to drive revenue and you're trying to hit certain profit margins for growth, to pay vendors, staff, and those sort of things. So the solution was building my own system. So full ownership of all the tools and platforms with the complete customization freedom. I didn't have any recurring subscription fees other than just hosting like we all have. And I was independent from developers. So if I just get out of this for a second and go here, and we just go to how to adapt online. Sorry about that. Online, so we go here. All right, so we go here, and so with the help of Replit, I've built this pretty clean looking site. And up the top, I've been able to add classes, features, things about our coaches, high performance junior academy. So it's a pretty clean site where you can scroll down. I can set up my classes. These link to the enrollment platform. So that's pretty standard. Features is just why we're able to do this. And then we're able to add things like a parent help center. So really step them through the enrollment thing, program information, and the AI was smart enough, and it asks you questions along the way. So what happens if my child's school is not a partner venue, say a private school where they only want their students? Then we offer other options, payment and billing, go through those explanations, policies, common questions, communications and updates, so that all the information is able to be there. So I had to learn back and forth, like, I want it to go home, so it's not so easy. I have to think about what's the experience like for the customer. So we're able to add a coaches page, so that we're all qualified. Here's our coaching team. So I can add this over time, and I don't have to ask a developer. I just talk to my coaches and say, hey, give me a bio, give me a photo that represents how you like to coach, tell me your story. And, then you get to know them a bit more. And again, I had to have that back to home button. So you have to go back and forth testing it. So to show you how that works, so that's the finished product. Okay. So if we then go into the program that I use, Replit. So this goes into my development workspace. And this particular project I called Sport Enroll because that's what it started as. And then it loads up into the development space. And basically in this little bit here, this is where you're talking to your agent to ask it to do stuff. All right, so I can go in here into the preview, and it previews my website, but I'm in the development space. So over here, I can say, we're coming up into term 2 or term 3. Could you please update all the available term 3 classes for all the venues to start from this date? It'll be a 9-week term. We're keeping our format the same, and it'll populate all this, and then it'll ask me a few questions. And then I check it here first, and if everything looks okay, then I publish it, which makes it live back over here. Okay. And when it's doing stuff, it'll tell you what it's doing. It'll ask you certain questions. It'll plan it. It can pull in another agent, like an engineer or architect, it'll call it, which will check certain things. So it'll go and say, I need this Python code, or I need this Flask, these different terminologies that it uses. All right, so that was that one. So that's pretty cool. So we go back here. So we've set up a junior academy page. It explains everything, really easy to follow. Senior squad, same thing. And then we can embed application forms. So, the AI learns the things that I like and works it out, which is pretty cool. And again, I want to always be able to go back to the main programs. All right. So I've just got notes here, of course. All right. So these, again, I built other apps. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I've learned how to do that now. Um, so I looked at making something really complicated, which was an athlete dashboard. So this is where I kind of got carried away with what things could do. So so it can be a bit hit and miss. So I made this too complicated because of what I asked it to create. And it's really busy. So I didn't like this one. So this one never got published. So I'm just being open about you can build something and maybe you come back to it later and the technology's improved or you've got some better ideas of what you want. So if I then go back to another one that I made, this is the Athlete Coach Hub. So the problem here was I was using Google Sheets to I was using Google Sheets to do rostering and things like that. So I went in here and I built a roster app. So now if I go to the Athletic Coach Hub, because now it's published, and I'm just hosting it on Replit. So I'm Coach Al. All right, so it helps if you can remember your own password, doesn't it? All right, anyway, we'll keep moving. So going back to the presentation here. So built my own systems. All right, so I think this is the really what everyone's interested in. So I'd been using just Replit and whatever AI agents it was using, I didn't really take notice. I didn't really care. So I ended up joining the school community, and there's a school there called the AIS Automation. Nate Herc is the guy, and he would post all these things about building your own AI workflows and agents and how to automate your emails and things like that. And I was learning it a bit, but it wasn't until he started talking about Claude and I started to use Claude a bit more. I found it a lot easier to use. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll watch some of these videos and try a few of these things. So what I ended up doing was watching a number of videos, feeling like I could understand it, creating some things with Claude. But then I started to hear about this Claude code and how I could use Claude code to work with Replit and that would do things faster and I'd end up with something better. So I went into a deep dive on that. So that took me a couple of months. So what I ended up doing was building basically an AI executive assistant and following a set of instructions. And putting that Claude agent onto my local machine. So it can look at local files on my hard drive. It's created a set of skills that I want it to do. And in this case, one of the skills is I want to check my emails twice a day, and I want to see if their client leads, if they're asking for coaching or consulting, and give them a rating as to how quickly I should respond. But also, I can draft response emails if I'm doing a promotion, such as Easter testing or 30% off, or we've got performance testing coming up, or it's a follow-up. So it helped me prioritize follow-ups and schedule time a bit better. And I was using the Google Sheets to capture athlete data. So that's where it was getting captured and put, and Claude was the thing that was connecting it. So I'd ask Claude how to do it. It would say I'd need to connect to Google Workspace and use app scripts, and we'd go back and forth and then work it out. So what that looks like is what a lot of these guys on YouTube don't tell you. They'll do a 20 to 30-minute video, but they don't give you the deep dive unless you go and watch one of their 6-hour videos. So what I had to do, I had to download this terminal program. It's a Microsoft product called Visual Studio. And basically, it gives you a user interface to use coding software. All right, so I was talking before about My Assistant. So it's created a folder on my local drive called My Assistant, and My Assistant is Claude, and Claude has rules of how I want my assistant to behave and the skills that I need it to have. And then it sets up all these. I give it context, decisions. I've set up things where we wanted Easter performance testing, so I'd had to do certain things. How I was going to promote my speed assessment tool. So every day I come in here, and in these preset things that we've done of what my focus is between Easter, term 2, and the rest of the year, I'm going to give it tasks I want it to do. So I'll come in here and say, oh, hey, Claude, how are we looking for this week's tasks? Sometimes you have to give it more context, right? So it'll go and think, and what it's doing is it's looking in these saved items. So here's what we had to do today. So here's where things stand. We updated the priorities and project files. Some direct debit messages were all drafted for people that had said that they'd agreed to the new payment system that I'd rolled out. And my term 2 social media series is drafted, that we're doing 5 posts between April 14th and 19th as a lead into term 2. So this, and then it's got a little thing here. This week, I've got to send some action items to a couple of clients. So they've already signed up. It's just a reminder email to say, hey guys, just a reminder, your first direct debit's coming out on this date, so they know where they stand. And then the open items I've got is Easter testing sessions. Am I still going to do it? People have been away, and obviously a lot of uncertainty around the moment. I'm still doing my sports biz database cleanup, which is what I was using previously, and I need to turn off inactive clients. Otherwise, I get charged per clients in the system, not necessarily all the ones I've got active. And also that I'm going to revisit one of my Replit builds on April 14th. So it says, and it also I've told it I'm going away to the Nationals in Sydney, and it says, oh, is there anything you want to action before you head off? And I'll just say, oh, no, thanks. I am doing my AI comms to coaches presentation tonight. You can make some spelling mistakes and it understands you. It says, good luck with tonight. This sounds great. Let me know how it goes. All right. So you start to build a rapport, and it starts to understand how you talk. All right. And so we go back. So you can see like it was great for email drafts, lead finding, and follow-ups. All right. So that was pretty good. That was just an example of a workflow. So that's what I was showing you there, that I was in Visual Studio. I was using Claude. Um, and what I tend to do is often I'll be doing something here talking to this Claude, but through the web browser, I'll be workshopping some ideas here in one of my chats with Claude and say, oh, hey, I'm building an AI company for business development, and we'll have a look here. And I say, oh, can we revisit this? I want to do that. And then I go down here and I say, oh, hey, could you do this? So you start to work a lot more seamlessly, which is cool. So technology is fun, isn't it? When you can't get back to your presentation. Here we go. Okay. All right. So you can see, why would you do this? So it takes ages to set up, but what I'm finding is it gives me, especially when I make a coffee in the morning and I start my task for the day, that email flow, it runs at 6 a.m. every morning and 6 p.m. every night. So I can say, oh, hey, did the email script run okay today? And it says, yep, this is what it is. Go across to here and have a look. So then I go, oh, all right, I'll go into my Google Sheet. So I'll go into my drive. Yeah, it's me. So I go into my sheets and I've got my Power to Adapt client leads here. So, I've got a client name, the email it came from, the inquiry when it was received, and then it'll give a summary. It'll say, oh, someone said a thank you for that and the free trial offer. Okay, and then I've kept a thing of who's doing what, and then I can do different logs. That's a lead, not a lead. So it takes a while to learn this stuff and understand how Google needs to talk to an app script, and then Claude's sort of filling in the gaps for you. So it's pretty cool. So that's given me a lot more clarity. I've done all the work in the background, but now things are starting to move a lot easier for me. Made it fun. So this was another thing I was able to build with Replit. We'd been looking at it for a while. It started as a sticker book idea that for the students to stay engaged, and if they met certain skills, they would get a sticker, but it just seemed a bit clunky. So I wanted to do a digital version of it, but I wanted to be engaged. So we came up with this idea of my athletic journey. And with what I've learned with Replit, I was able to ask the question in a better way and end up with something we're much more happy with. So what will happen now is that the parents will get the option to opt in and get a login for their child, and they start their athletic journey and they have a skill focus per term, and they get assessed, and then they'll get points and unlock different things. But also we explain what this week's concept is and why we're working on it, and then they have a reflection piece. So we'll be triangling that in term 2, and we'll see how that goes. So the reason we want to do it is we want increased athlete engagement, but also retaining them and building a stronger coach-athlete relationship and stronger coach-parent relationship as well, and working with the schools on their development programs. So we need to provide value and proof that it's worth having. So doing the weekly reflection here, where do you feel that in your body? Where do you feel most possible? They get extra points for that. And then what the parent gets is progress reports, weekly summaries, transparent component, and we're providing value that it's worth doing, and we're building trust, and we're hoping that aids retention and the parents feel more informed and return on investment. So then we're looking at we're looking to build strength and injury prevention data and some partnerships with some physiotherapy and sports medicine type people. So we're looking at collecting data to track athlete strength metrics and movement patterns over time, identify risk factors. So again, we want to collect data. So AI is a good way to do that. And then we're still working through how to do this, what that looks like, and putting the data into practice. So the coolest thing is I don't need to use a developer now. I'm learning to develop myself. Didn't need any coding skills, even though I opened that terminal because I want to understand the code a bit, and I have a technical background, so it's helpful for me. Learning the right tools. Now, you might use Claude and Lovable or some other tool. I just like the way that Replit works, and I don't want to go and learn a different thing now. So the AI is not replacing you. You're using it like an executive assistant or an assistant coach or someone that is really good. That's their A. So you can do your A work. They're doing the B work that you're not so good at, and it just helps things. So what I like about it is empowerment and ownership. I start to get clear on my goals. I get more control over my systems, more control over my time, and I can choose to grow or just refine what I'm doing. And just to give you an overview, the presentation that you've just watched took me 90 minutes to create. So I set a stopwatch. I wanted to be transparent about how long it took. And I used Claude, Gemini, and Canva. So I set the brief with Claude, and because we'd had previous conversations, it understood what the background was. I use Canva to set up the slides and my color scheme, and I've used Canva extensively, and you can resize it for Instagram, Facebook, PowerPoint, whatever, really, YouTube. And then the Gemini, so the animated things you would have seen, they were Gemini produced. So Gemini just seems to be the cleanest with image production at the moment. Claude can do some basic templates for you into Word and things like that. If you're not too worried about high definition and you just want basic colors. And then the biggest thing was just getting things in the right place. Like, oh, that's overlapping that and back and forth and just getting it looking clean. They're the things that take a little bit of time. So hopefully you enjoyed the presentation and you've got lots of questions. So sorry I wasn't able to work things out properly for people to get on a live call, but feel free to watch it many times. If there's a particular part you're really interested in, just comments, contact me. Happy to help and run through how you set it all up properly, because that's another conversation. Directing you to where you can go and learn things at your own pace and get your own understanding. But just be prepared. It takes time, and you got to write your own notes. And once you feel comfortable and you start to see the patterns that make sense to you, depending on your background and what other systems that you use, I think it's best, like, if you're already using certain systems, like, I like using Excel or Google Sheets or Docs or whatever, start with those things first, because it'll be the most familiar. And then from that, you'll get ideas of, actually, I liked how it did that. So maybe I can try this. So that's basically what I did, is found some things that I liked that it produced, took time to look into other things that were a little bit frustrating to see if there's a better option. And that's the thing at the moment. There's an updated option, or things are faster or have more functionality, a couple of times a month. So that's the hardest part, is keeping up with the information. But start with something, get familiar with it. Don't try too many things at once, I guess, is the best idea. I'm sharing the mistakes I made about doing too many things, and then having to simplify it. And then once I simplified it, now I've ended up with a product that I really like and is easy to use, and is just making a huge difference to my business, my communication, clarity, targets and goals, and planning. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Cheers.